Are new 2017 laws around the country a net positive or a net negative for liberty? Also, what's in the news with stories on legislated porn blockers, suing porn websites, stingrays, NSA watchdog fired, Alexa, school fight felonies, and New Hampshire constitutional carry. Also, a new segment called New Hampshire, It's Like This Too, and a road segment on who will really build the roads.
Welcome to the Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. Coming to you from the state that was the home of the largest private game reserve in North America near Croydon Mountain, this is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Revolution needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at the Lava Flow Pod. This is episode 53, the New Year, New Laws 2017 edition, and it's Tuesday, January 17th, 2017. When at least 1,152 people were killed by police in 2016, and there have already been 43 killed this year. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. In 2016, my first episode after the new year was to discuss many of the new laws that came about at the turn of the new year. I really liked doing that episode, so I think I'm going to make it a tradition and do it again this year at least, and hopefully every year going forward. So let's jump right in and see what good and bad laws took effect in 2017. First, the bad. Forced morality by taxation was big for 2017. Philadelphia, San Francisco, Oakland, and Boulder, Colorado all enacted anywhere from 1 to 2 cents per ounce tax on artificially sweetened drinks. 7 states raised their gas taxes in 2017. And as we discussed a few episodes ago, Portland, Oregon passed their tax that targets excessive CEO pay. As an aside, if I'm a CEO in Portland, my first act of 2017 would be to announce that my business is getting the fuck out of Portland. Oh, also, Georgia passed a 5% higher tax on fireworks in that state. The state of Vermont, along with the cities of Santa Monica, California, and Spokane, Washington, passed laws that require employers to give paid sick time to employees by force. Arizona voters did the same, but that law doesn't take effect until July. Gun owners in California will face new restrictions after Governor Jerry Brown signed a law banning the purchase of semi-automatic rifles with so-called, quote, evil features. The evil features include pistol grips, flash hiders, and bullet buttons that make it easier to remove and replace ammunition magazines. The LA Times reported an increase in gun purchases in the lead up to the January 1 implementation. Imagine that. Voters in 20 states all showed their utter ignorance of economics and voted to raise their minimum wage, ranging from Missouri, where it goes up by a nickel, to Arizona, where it jumps nearly $2 an hour. 4 of the 6 states now in New England are increasing their minimum wage. New Hampshire is still the lowest, firmly at the federal rate of $7.25 per hour. Maine is now second with their increase to $9, with Massachusetts now taking the top spot at $11 per hour, raising from $10 per hour last year. Illinois passed a law requiring cosmetologists to undergo forced training to recognize signs of domestic and sexual abuse on their customers. Because that's exactly what cosmetologists should be doing. Give me a fucking break. Ohio and New Hampshire has now outlawed bestiality, or engaging in sex with animals. No word on how that's going to be enforced. Ohio will also no longer contract with individuals, companies, or countries participating in boycotts against Israel. Really? California passed perhaps the wackiest bill of the year, which will require dairy farmers to take extra steps to capture the methane gas from their cattle, or in layman's terms, their farts and their burps. I shit you not. See what I did there? This is after 53 California dairy farmers went bankrupt, moved out of the state, or just closed down in 2017. California is apparently telling dairy farmers, take your business elsewhere. And now, the good. And as usual, the list of good laws is far fewer than the list of bad laws. The legalization of marijuana spread further this year. Recreational sales will soon become legal in Nevada, California, Maine, and Massachusetts. Voters in the last election approved legalizing the drug for medical purposes in North Dakota, Montana, Florida, and my former home state of Arkansas. Tennessee, meanwhile, is now allowing some younger adults to get a handgun carry permit, bringing the minimum age down to 18 from 21 years old. Missouri is the latest state to enact a, quote, constitutional carry law, allowing adults starting at age 19 to carry a concealed firearm without a permit. Governor Jay Nixon, a Democrat, vetoed the law, but the veto was overridden. A new Ohio law, soon to take effect, gives employees the right to store a firearm in a locked vehicle or a locked glove compartment parked on company property. And in Pennsylvania, hunters will be allowed to shoot animals with semi-automatic rifles. Illinois is allowing people to catch catfish by stabbing the creatures with pitchforks, spear guns, or even arrows, a method apparently very popular in rural parts of that state. I find it funny that the state is allowing a practice that's been happening for a very long time and is damn near impossible to restrict. New Jersey actually lowered their state income tax from 7% to 6.875%, and they're going to drop it again in 2018 to 6.625%. Which will result in about $100 million less in the state coffers that they'll have to use to infringe on your liberty. So all in all, yet another bad year for liberty in most of the country. There's nothing new here, and I don't see it changing much next year either. But there's always hope. Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe. So you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In Do It for the Children news, South Carolina Representative Bill Chumley filed a bill that would install a porn blocker on any internet-capable device, and users would have to pay $20 to remove the filter if they want to see naughty things. A better idea, I think, would be to install a bill blocker on South Carolina legislatures that would require a $20,000 fee to allow them to write any bill. If devices are sold in South Carolina without a porn blocker, the retailers or manufacturers will have to pay a $20 fine to the state, per device. Given the technological problems with trying to install any kind of realistic porn blocker on a computer, a cynic would say that South Carolina is just trying to impose a $20 tax on the sale of electronic devices. Aside from the many logistical and technical challenges with trying to get all manufacturers to install device-level internet filtering, and the fact that South Carolina is in a free trade zone of 49 non-porn blocking states, there's also constitutional implications. Device-level blocking that requires a fee to unlock is the virtual definition of a First Amendment violation, something that Chumley has failed to address so far, and likely never will. In more porn news, Utah Senator Todd Weiler said he will soon introduce new legislation that will allow Utah residents who imagine themselves addicted to porn to sue websites where they watch it. Weiler said, quote, "I'm trying to kind of track the same path that was taken against tobacco 70 years ago. I'm looking at where we can push the envelope as a state of Utah. To pretend that this is not having any impact on our youth, on children's minds as they're developing, as their attitudes towards sex and the opposite sex are being formed, I think is foolish." Weiler is the same Utah senator who sponsored last year's resolution declaring pornography a, quote, public health hazard. This guy really has a hard-on for pornography. Weiler fancies his solution a libertarian one, I shit you not. Quote, "It's not government coming in and saying what you can and can't watch," he said. "It's just basically a message to the pornography industry that if someone in Utah can prove damages from the product, that they may be held liable financially. Fuck this guy in the neck. Record it and sell it as porn. That would be justice." In surveillance state news, the Department of Homeland Security and Justice Department have spent collectively more than $95 million on secret cell phone tracking technology and own more than 400 cell site simulators that can be used to zero in covertly on the location of cell phones, according to a congressional report. With 194 cell site simulators, the FBI has the most of any of the agencies identified as owning the devices, which often are referred to by brand names including Stingray and Hailstorm. The U.S. Marshal Service has 70, U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement has 59, U.S. Customs and Border Protection and the Drug Enforcement Administration each have 33, the U.S. Secret Service has 32, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives has 13, the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigations Division has 2, and the Treasury Inspector General has 1. Cell site simulators mimic cell towers to trick cell phones to connect to them, enabling investigators to obtain identifying information about the phones and their locations. Law enforcement officers often deploy the suitcase-sized devices by hauling them in vehicles as they drive through neighborhoods looking for suspects' phones, scooping up data on cell phones of passerbyers in the process. Innocent passerbyers. The report does not indicate how many local law enforcement agencies have cell site simulators, but it states that the Homeland Security Department identified more than $1.8 million in grant money it provided to state and local law enforcement to purchase such technology. Fortunately, since 2015, federal regulations have required federal agencies to obtain a warrant to use these devices against you. This, however, is not the case for local departments. In Sweet Justice news, the top NSA watchdog, who insisted that Edward Snowden should have come to him with his grievances, has received a termination notice for retaliating against a whistleblower. Until just a few months ago, George Ellard occupied a position of trust as top watchdog of the National Security Agency, America's principal collector of signals intelligence. Ellard was not only NSA's Inspector General, but an outspoken critic of Edward Snowden. Snowden claimed, among other things, that his concerns about NSA's domestic eavesdropping were ignored by the agency, and that he feared retaliation. Ellard publicly argued in 2014 that Snowden could have safely reported the allegations of NSA's domestic surveillance directly to him. Now it's been revealed that a high-level intelligence community panel found that Ellard himself had previously retaliated against an NSA whistleblower. Informed of that finding, NSA's director, Admiral Michael Rogers, promptly issued Ellard a notice of proposed termination, although Ellard apparently remains an agency employee while on administrative leave, pending a possible response to his appeal. So he's on an extended, taxpayer-funded vacation, of course. It seems that every few weeks there is new evidence justifying the actions that Edward Snowden took to notify us about the surveillance that was happening. This is just further justification. Thank you, Edward Snowden. You are my hero. In hard negotiation news, Dennis Muhlenberg, CEO of Boeing, said that they will build the new Air Force One for less than $4 billion. This comes immediately after a meeting with President-elect Trump. Muhlenberg praised Trump for his business head and said the two had a very productive meeting where they discussed how the country could build 2 new Air Force One planes for less than the $4 billion, which Trump criticized on Twitter last month. Quote, "We're going to get it done for less than that," Muhlenberg said. Quote, "I was able to give the president-elect my personal commitment on behalf of the Boeing company. This is a business that's important to us. We work on Air Force One because it's important to our country, and we're going to make sure that he gets the best capability and that it's done affordably." Trump's tweet that prompted this said, quote, "Boeing is building a brand new 747 Air Force One for future president, but costs are out of control. More than $4 billion. Cancel order." In Alexa is Listening news, the police in Bentonville, Arkansas, have asked Amazon to give them access to any voice recordings that its Echo digital assistant may have made at the time that an alleged murder was committed. According to the court documents, James Andrew Bates is charged with killing Victor Collins on November 22, 2015, after Collins was found dead in Bates's hot tub. Amazon records all requests with the idea that Alexa will learn better over time how to respond to specific customers' queries and orders. However, Echo does not record every word that people say in their homes. In other words, always listening is not the same as always recording. So in this specific case, unless someone asked Alexa how to clean up bloodstains or the best techniques for garroting a person, the voice recordings from this device are unlikely to be of any help at all to the police. Amazon is resisting the Bentonville police request. In a statement to Engadget, the company said, quote, "Amazon will not release customer information without a valid and binding legal demand properly served on us." Amazon objects to overbroad or otherwise inappropriate demands as a matter of course. Good for Amazon. This would open up a can of worms that we do not want to be opened. Fortunately, you are able to delete recordings from your Alexa device using the Alexa app. But what a pain in the ass that is. In my roads news, the only plow truck driver for most of Parsonsfield, Maine, quit after a storm dumped 25 inches of snow on the town on December 30th. So the residents of the tiny hamlet knew what they had to do. They grabbed shovels and they got to work. The roads were close to fully cleared by the residents by that afternoon. Select Board member Tiffany Brent said, quote, "People got together in our towns and they went out. They plowed, they salted, sanded, pushed back the banks, and went back out after the storm to make sure everything was good. They just did it. Without the government, roads will still exist, and they will still be plowed. The government doesn't plow my driveway, but it still gets plowed. Imagine that." In Government Indoctrination Center news, kids in Missouri could now go to jail for getting into fights at school. Prior to this law, if a student got into a fight and hurt another person, they'd be charged with a misdemeanor and then released to their parents. However, with the new law that went into effect on January 1st, that student will now head to a juvenile detention center and be charged with a Class E felony. That means they could spend up to 4 years in jail. 4 fucking years in jail. For a juvenile. For fighting. This is absolutely insane. One Missouri school district website says, quote, "Students who are caught fighting in school, bus, or on school grounds may now be charged with a felony no matter the age or grade level. If this assault is witnessed by one of the school resource officers or the SRO, local law enforcement officials have to intervene." Look, folks, I've said on this show a million times, and I'll say it a million more. Get your kids out of government indoctrination centers. In Free State Project news, a New Hampshire Senate panel has backed eliminating the permit required to carry a concealed weapon, which would effectively bring about constitutional carry in the state. New Hampshire already allows for open carry without a permit. Supporters of a bill that would make it easier to legally carry a concealed weapon in New Hampshire are hoping the third time is the charm. The past 2 attempts passed with Republican majorities in both the House and the Senate, but were vetoed by then-Governor Maggie Hassan, a Democrat. Quote, "This legislation simply serves to restore the intent of the U.S. Constitution by eliminating the licensing requirement to carry a concealed firearm by individuals legally able to do so," said Senate Majority Leader Jeb Bradley, Republican of Wolfboro, sponsor of this legislation. Quote, "This issue is about protecting our citizens' lives, liberties, and loved ones, and that is what we need to restore law-abiding citizens' rights to carry a firearm." At this point, it appears to be a near certainty that this bill will pass and be signed by the new governor, Chris Sununu. And in some personal news, I finally got into our new home in New Hampshire. I want to take a minute and thank you all for your patience and your understanding during my longer than I anticipated hiatus from this podcast while we moved. The purchase of the house and the move ended up being an absolute nightmare. And there were problems at every single step of the way. But it's all done now, and I am now officially a homeowner in New Hampshire. Finally. And we now have a detached rental house on our property. And we just put in new kitchens and bathrooms in that rental property. So if you've been looking for a launch pad for your move to New Hampshire for the Free State Project, let me know and I can hook you up. It's got 1 bedroom, 1.5 baths, an attached garage, which is so helpful in New Hampshire winters, and plenty of storage for all of your stuff. We'll do short-term and long-term rentals, so shoot me an email at feedback@thelavaflow.com, and I'll get you all the information that you need. And again, thank you for your patience while I was out. Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per-episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
You can buy a handgun, you can buy some fireworks. Sandwich Fair, rest in peace, Daniel Webster. America's Stonehenge, long live the dairy trade, long live the old man. I'm from the granites, really.
New Hampshire, if you don't want to wear a helmet, there's nothing they can do. Here in New Hampshire,
This is a new segment for the show. I realized that I talk about New Hampshire enough on this show that it would be pertinent to put that kind of information in a new segment that I like to call New Hampshire. It's like this too. As you, my loyal listeners, are aware, I moved to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project in October of 2015, and I've loved every minute of being here. This segment will be my periodic way of talking about my love of this state and the activism and other news that goes on here. And speaking of activism in New Hampshire, the day that this podcast releases, I will be spending my first day doing jury nullification at the Ossipee District Court in Ossipee, New Hampshire, as part of an effort put together by Joel Valenzuela with his Rights Brigade network, where we will have jury nullification pamphlets handed out to every prospective juror in the state of New Hampshire. I can't wait to get started on that project. But one of the coolest New Hampshireites that is not a part of the Free State Project is Dean Kamen, inventor of the Segway and many medical devices, including the auto syringe and an all-terrain wheelchair known as the iBot. He is one fascinating guy, and you can watch a documentary about him on Netflix called Slingshot. Recently, Kamen has been working on a project to regenerate human tissue and organs right here in the Manchester Mill Yard in New Hampshire. The new company, called the Advanced Regenerative Manufacturing Institute, or ARMI, will receive $214 million from industry, university, nonprofit, and other sources devoted to the effort. Unfortunately, he's also going to be receiving about $80 million in federal funding as well, to find ways to restore form, function, and appearance to wounded soldiers, and it will reduce the waiting time for organ transplant patients as well. Quote, "We need to essentially make the printing press for the world of regenerative medicine," said Kamen. "We are going to so vastly accelerate the access to advanced technology that this will be the biggest single change in medicine in the lifetime of the people here," he said. And I don't doubt that. The ability to regenerate tissue and organs will be huge for the medical industry and the lifespan of humans. Think of the implications for this. Lung cancer? No big deal. Rip out the lung and replace it with one that was generated. Massive burns? Replace the skin with regenerated skin. Of course, the government does have an interest in this, since they send our young men and women to be targets in wars that we have no business being involved in, and so the government wants to try and put them back together again. But I have a better idea for the government. Quit sending our young men and women to war. See? I fixed it.
Hello, friends. Scott McDonald here. Please listen to my show, The ANCAP Barbershop. We would like to be your source for libertarianism and anarchy. My co-host Adam and I discuss current events, politics, and philosophy. The ANCAP Barbershop is not your run-of-the-mill political podcast. We have a flair for the irreverent and an appreciation for all things irrelevant. If you would like to help us smash the state, please subscribe wherever you consume podcasts, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Have a good one, and we hope to see you at the shop.
Hey there, Liberty lovers. This is Mark Clare of the Lions of Liberty podcast, where we strive to bring you great conversations about the ideas of liberty 3 days a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Check us out at lionsofliberty.com.
Fuck. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad is Liberty. Each week we strive to bring you the best guests in talk radio. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad delivers weekly interviews of noteworthy politicians, experts, and activists. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad is bringing the party to the Libertarian Party and launching ideas in your direction. Check us out at johnnyrocketlaunchpad.com, and you can hear me, Kurt Nelson, and the beautiful Heather Nixon talk about the ideas of liberty. Rock and roll.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88. Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
This segment is all about how to take products and services normally provided by the government and put them completely in the private sector. Since one of the most prolific arguments made by statists is, quote, "without government, who will build the roads?" I do tend to talk about roads in this segment quite a lot. This episode is no different. The blog Libertarian Money wrote a fantastic article about this very topic that I wanted to share with you. This article is called, quote, "The Definitive Guide to Who Will Build the Roads." You can get a link to the full article in the show notes to this episode at thelavaflow.com/53. But I'm going to take a few minutes here and kind of break it down for you. This article is a couple of years old, but it crossed my desk only recently, and it was way too good not to share with you guys. So the author of the article starts by stating the obvious. Who will build the roads? Road builders. The question actually should be, who will pay the road builders? This is the question that he tries to answer in the article. He makes the case that asking who will build the roads without government is like asking who will pick the cotton when we free the slaves. And he's right. People freaked out before the abolition of slavery because without slaves to pick the cotton, it wasn't going to get picked. Of course, now looking back on it, we see that as, at least for a while, the people who picked cotton after slavery were the same people who picked it before. They just got paid for it. That is, until technology caught up and machines pick it now. The author uses this to make the case that it really doesn't matter who's going to build the roads. The fact is that government is a non-voluntary, immoral interaction. As he said, quote, if the requirement to have roads is extorting 300 million people, then I personally would rather everyone walk. Fortunately, people don't have to walk. There are plenty of incentives in the free market for people to build roads. The author further makes the case that without government, would we even need roads? He says, quote, if the government didn't build the roads for cars, would people still be driving cars? They could be driving off-road vehicles that don't need roads to be built. If no one ever built the roads, then car companies might have developed the technology to hover above the ground instead of needing roads. Naturally, this is all just silly speculation, but there's one untouchable point. We cannot predict whether we would need roads if government didn't build them. At this point in the article, it shifts to discussing possibilities about who would build roads if government didn't. He starts with car companies. Of course, car companies would want a place for their product to be used, so it's possible that they would build the roads. He also makes the case that private road companies would build roads and charge a fee to use them, no different than an amusement park company builds an amusement park and charges a fee for people to use those. Landowners may also pay to build the roads. Land is pretty much useless if you can't get to it. Your business won't stay in business very long if there's no road to allow customers access to it. And finally, the author discusses two important things in his conclusions. First, all of the solutions to this problem have very little or no complexity at all. Anyone can figure out simple solutions to these problems. There could be limitless possibilities of solutions to these problems. His last point is simply this. Who will build the roads? No one knows. And you know what? He's right. No one could have predicted the iPhone 15 years ago, and no one can predict what our road system and cars would look like in the future without government interference. And this is a good thing. As the author concludes, quote, no one knows how much different the world would be if government didn't build the roads. Anyone that claims otherwise is lying. The points you need to consider are probably not logistics. The points you need to consider more are the ethical implications. Do you support extortion, kidnapping, theft, and every other non-voluntary transaction used to build the roads? That's the real question. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite home renovator, Jessica, for her help with this show. For the show notes to this episode where I put links and other information that's been on the show, go to thelavaflow.com/53. I don't have any new iTunes reviews this week. It would be a huge help to me if you would review this show. Please go to thelavaflow.com/iTunes to leave me a rating and a review today. I have 4 new donors since my last episode. Paul is supporting the Lava Flow at $1 per episode using Patreon. Thank you, Paul. My good friend Vince, who is on a European tour right now, also pledged $1 per episode. Thanks, Vince, and hurry back to the Shire. We miss you. Ross also pledged $1 per episode. Thank you so much, Ross. And David is supporting the show at $10 per episode using Patreon. Wow. David, I just can't thank you enough. Thanks so much. And thanks to all of my donors. This now puts me at $180 per episode, or 72% of the way towards my next level, where I will be bringing you a full 30-minute episode of the Lava Flow every single week. And if you, like Paul, Vince, Ross, and David, want more of the Lava Flow, exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving me a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, using Federal Reserve notes through Patreon or Bitcoin through Coinbase. I want to be able to bring you more content soon. So make sure to add your donation today to help make that happen. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.